computer. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and make this bigger. Okay. So good evening, everyone. Really excited to be back with you guys and to go through some of my personal favorite strategies in the classroom. So last week we talked about gave a little bit of background on what is ASD, and we went over environmental setup, and we touched a little bit on visual supports. But we're going to go more in depth in that today, and we're also going to be talking about general strategies. I'm really excited to have with me today my wonderful supervisor and manager at CARD, Sarah Dager. I'm going to go ahead and let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Dager. I work alongside Christina and Alexandra, who's also joining us today. I'm very excited to be here again. I was in the presentation last week, but just monitoring the chat. Thank you for being here. We're very excited. My background is in teaching. I have a degree in elementary education, and I have a master's in special ed. I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you, and we're very excited to have you. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm gonna do is we're gonna, in the chat box, if somebody were to show you this visual and say, do this, what would you do? So I want you guys to take a minute, take a look, think about it, and write in the chat box what you would do. We're getting a lot of different answers. Give everybody one more minute to see what else we come up with. Okay, so if you guys all look in the chat, you're gonna see that everybody interprets this differently, right? So this is a visual that we're all seeing different. So some people are saying that they would color shapes, some people would create triangles, some people would count them, some people would throw something, some people would build a house. So everybody here sees the exact same picture, the exact same visual, but you are interpreting it different, right? So why is this important for you guys to have in mind from this point forward? Because what happens is in our classroom, we're constantly taught, and I was guilty of this too, we are taught that we create these visuals and we put them in the classroom, and we think that just because we have them there, that our students are going to automatically, just by us showing them the visual, they're gonna understand what we're telling them. Now, you may have students that because of past history or because of different experiences in their life, they will be able to just interpret it or just understand what you want them to do by showing them the picture, or the visual. But you are going to have students in most cases where you're going to have to create these visuals, whether it's the schedules, whether it's something that you want to get them to do, where you're going to have to explicitly teach them what those things are, right? So many times people bring up this example, right, where you go on a trip somewhere and you're in a country where you don't know the language, but there are these universal visuals that you can follow, and you can sort of get along or get through by looking at the pictures and knowing like what to do, right? Because the pictures are assisting you. But you know what these pictures mean because either somebody taught them to you or in your own language, or because you've had you can kind of put it together based on your previous experiences. But for some of our students, they have such trouble interpreting language and with communication and stuff that the visuals are definitely extremely helpful, and we're going to show you how to implement them in different ways in your classroom. But it's always important to remember that they have to be explicitly taught to them in many, many situations, right? So I'm glad that everybody came up with a different answer.
I love the answers.
Me too. Me too. You guys came up with things that I wouldn't have thought of.
I wouldn't have thought of either.
Okay, so let's get started. So Something that is very, very, very popular amongst, amongst in classes of students with ASD or other sorts of developmental disabilities are visual schedules, right? So every day, I personally use visual schedule, my own visual schedule, right? Whether it's whatever you have on your phone, whether it's an agenda. So for example, I know Sarah likes her online calendar, right? She really, like, she uses it for everything. She really likes it. Every year, I have to buy myself a paper and pencil visual thing, and I like to write it down because it's what keeps me organized. So her and I have very similar schedules in terms of work, but we have different ways that we like to approach it. We have different ways of different things that we like to use. So we're going to go over all of that. We're going to show you different things that you could possibly implement in your classroom. Okay, so again, everything that we're going to talk about today is going to be part of that TEACCH fidelity checklist that we're going to be sending you all at the end of the 3 presentations on Wednesday. So we're going to include all the presentations, the checklist, the article that explains it, and any other resources that we feel are going to be beneficial to you. So, visual schedules. Overall classroom schedule should be prominently displayed that indicates staff and student assignments. Individual child schedules are used consistently throughout the day. So it's important that whenever you're going to transition, you have the child check their schedule, because that keeps them consistent. It keeps them knowing where they're going to go from one place to another. If sometimes you do it and sometimes you don't, then that could create a little bit of confusion and a little bit of frustration within your classroom or within the students and stuff like that. Visual transition cues are used consistently throughout the day. And classroom areas are visually labeled with matching schedule components. So I'll show you what that looks like. So one recommendation that we have is to have an overall classroom schedule, right? So you'll have your students that maybe the student schedules are a little bit more specific, and we'll show you what that looks like. But you also can include, which you should, an overall classroom schedule. So here we have 2 examples. We have one on the left that also has the time on it. And then the one on the right has an arrow that you can point at the activity that they should be doing in that moment. Now, a couple of general suggestions that I have. I did have a couple of students when I was a teacher where having a clock and having the clocks next to it was very distracting. What would happen is if we didn't do something exactly on the dot of the time that it said, they would start to get very frustrated. So I just, I started just using a different schedule because it was more for them to stay on task, but we didn't want them to have problem behavior or to get frustrated. And then we would work on that sort of frustration tolerance at a different part of the day. And then another good strategy just for them to see how their day was progressing is, let's say after circle time, we would flip that around and you would just see like the white background. And then the individual student schedules. So we talked about this a little bit last week as well. This is what they would look like. We have the ones that are on the far left. We have the ones that we normally see, which are the individual schedules with the pictures. And then in the middle, for students who may have a little bit of a harder time with that because they can't really connect with like a 2D picture, you can create stuff like this. Like this art is like a little box that has the picture on it. The games one is another little box that has like some dice in it for writing it to pencil. So you can make something really, really concrete for them that they can handle, that they can manipulate, and they can connect these objects that they've probably used a lot and they've already been exposed to with the activity that they're going to do. And it really helps them to understand what is expected from them from where they're going. And then the last one is one where you could use like a wet erase marker. And then these are for students that are maybe a little bit either older or at a different level, maybe even a student that's in inclusion where they just need it in their desk and they can just go with the wet erase marker in the little boxes on the right. They can just go checking off what they're doing throughout the day. Okay, so for the individual student schedules, the smaller picture is what they would have in their individual section. And then in the check-in station, which would be in the area that they're going to go to, they would have the bigger one. And that would look a little bit like this, okay? So there's multiple ways where you can do a check-in station. So the key for this is that these bigger pictures, these check-in stations should be in the area where the child is going to engage in that activity, right? So things to keep in mind for this is, for example, the one with the drink, it has some Velcro pieces on it. And this is for students that maybe that will be able to go and hold that and match it easily. But you may have students where their fine motor skills are not there yet, or they're still working on stuff like that. And then you can have something like this folder and all this binder here, and all they need to do is just drop it in. You don't have to worry about matching it and that fine motor skill of like really pressing it up against the Velcro. Okay. Then individual schedules are designed to match students' developmental level, strengths, and needs. So assessment is used in determining the appropriate schedule length, location, and manner of presentation. So again, things that what we have just been talking about. And students have individual daily schedules adjusted to their developmental level. So all these things go really hand in hand with what we just talked about. What their schedule looks like should be very individualized, whether it's the pictures, whether it's the objects, whether it's just either checking things off, or even if it's just in their binder and it's written out like we discussed a little bit last week, that's fine too. It's really just getting to whatever it is that the child needs. And then students are taught how to use the visual schedule and how to address changes that occur in the schedule. Students are prepared for changes in the scheduled activities, and staff prompts students with minimal verbal physical cues if needed when using the schedule. So a few things that I like to bring up when this comes up, right? So what will happen, and it's happened to me, and I'm sure some of you have seen this before, is sometimes these visual schedules in itself, you'll have a student come in and they'll see in their visual schedule that they have an activity that they do not want to engage in, or they see that their favorite activity is followed by something that is non-preferred for them. So what happens there is that these are antecedent strategies, and sometimes by themselves they don't work. So they need some sort of also a consequence, right? And not a consequence in a bad way, but a consequence in like, they need to have some sort of reinforcement that follows this. So even if it's, they go and they check schedule for that non-preferred activity, and then when they get to their table, they have 30 seconds to play with something that they really like. Or if their parents are okay with that, to have some sort of small snack, something really simple, something really small. But for them to understand like, oh, I'm gonna take this schedule, this picture or this object or whatever, I'm gonna go to my to the area that I need to be at. I'm gonna get something. So my consequence is that I'm gonna get some sort of reinforcer, and then I'm gonna engage in this activity, and later I'm able to do things that I enjoy doing. So that's one thing. It's important for you to keep that in mind, because it is something that you'll see happen. Now, the other recommendation that I have is we are all creatures of habit, especially when we have a classroom like this, where we have students that we're trying to maintain, we're trying to teach them so many things at once, right? So what we tend to do is we have pretty much the same schedule every single day. Every single day we go through the same activities in the same order, and we have this visual schedule, and it's great. But what happens, for example, the day that we need to go to the playground and it's raining? Or what happens the day that we need to go to the media center but it's closed for another activity? So something that we like to recommend is for you guys to, in a small scale, start to prepare them for a change in an activity. So, and you can have a visual on there, like for something else, but try to always sort of plan it where you yourselves are aware that you're going to do it, and you're prepared for that, that change in routine. But you start to teach your students to accept change, because what will happen is in a situation where you just have to change it, or there has to be a change in the schedule, then you may have multiple students at the same time having a hard time. And fortunately or unfortunately, life doesn't always progress the exact same way every single day. So in order for us to be successful and for us to teach them a little bit of flexibility, it's important to kind of program for that kind of thing. So visual schedules are used within classroom activities and or outside the classroom throughout daily activities. So these visual schedules don't necessarily just have to be for inside the classroom. Individuals within activity schedules are available to use different classroom activities if needed. And individual schedules move with the students across setting, or elements of the visual schedules are located across settings. So I'll show you what that looks like. So for example, within an activity, if let's say they have to do multiple things within one activity, you can have a visual for them as well. So for example, for circle time, they can take this with them and have check marks, which is what it shows here on the left, for each thing that they're going to do. So they find their circle, they get a check mark. They sit on the floor, they get a check mark. Quiet hands, eyes on the teacher, ready to listen, etc. And the same thing for like lunchtime or snack time. You give them a progression of what they should be doing during that time. And then, so now I'll go into a little bit of work systems. So I'm sure that if you guys this is something that's new to you, this seems like a lot of work, and it is. It is, but you are going to see that when you start to implement these things, it's a lot of work at the beginning and when you're first starting to teach it, but after a while, it really promotes independence and it really makes your job easier. And I know that I keep saying that, but I'm saying that because I've been there and I know what it is to have these things and I know what it is to not have these things. And when you have these things, they're very, very, very helpful. So work systems. Work systems and related components are used consistently throughout the day. So a work system is in place for each student to use during independent work time. Work systems are used consistently during independent work time each day, and students are using work systems independent from teacher prompting. So a couple of things about this. When you're gonna set this up, right? And I'm gonna give you examples of what the activities can look like and all that stuff. But when you're gonna set this up, the important thing to remember is what the child is gonna, or the student is gonna learn from this is how to complete the work system. So how the system itself works, not the activities within the system. So this is, when you're thinking about how am I gonna come up with activities for this, all the activities that you're gonna include in here are gonna be things that the students can do independently. So I'll show you what I mean. So work systems and related components are used consistently throughout the day. So the organization and structure of the work system should answer 4 questions for the student. So these questions are for the student. What work will I do? So it should be clear of the work that they're going to be doing, how much of the work it's going to be, when am I finished, and what activity do I do next? So I'll show you what that looks like, right? So here, if you see it, they know that they're going to do 3 activities and then they're going to be done, right? Because they have their numbers 1 through 3. They take 1, they match it to the 1. They take that basket and you can see the entire progression of everything. And right down here, they have a basket that says finished and they have the same matching picture up here. So they know they take that 1, they match it, they take that activity, that basket over here, they complete it, put it in the finished, and then keep going 2, 3, and then that last picture is what shows them that they're finished. And work systems and related components are used consistently throughout the day. So these are other ways that you can do it. So this could be, and these can be filled with all types of things, right? So you have that, you have, for students that maybe are a little bit more advanced, you can do some worksheets and different things like that. And again, these are other ways that you can implement it. So it doesn't all have to look one way. There's multiple ways to create a work system. And then work systems are designed to match students' developmental level, strengths, and needs. Assessment is used in determining the appropriate work system format and length. Work systems are individualized to match students' developmental level and interests. So format and length, right? So when you're gonna do this, you're gonna have students that you're gonna start off with maybe one activity that's very simple. So one activity that's taking maybe some pom-poms and putting it inside a cup and putting that away, and that will be it. And then you may have students that can go up to 5 or 6 activities at a time that take up to 30, 40, 45 minutes, depending. It really depends on your student. It really depends on that student and at their developmental level. So I know somebody had asked before about how you can make these systems, and we're going to go into that too, but these are actually really good systems for classes where you have multiple, or have students that are at different levels, and even that are working at different curriculums. So for students that are on modified and students that are on a gen ed curriculum. So activities used in the independent work systems are individualized. So tasks used in independent work areas reflect previously mastered skills. So like I mentioned, these are skills that the students already have. What you're gonna want them to learn from this is how to use the system, not how to complete the activities that you're putting in there. So these are for skills that have already been mastered, because we just want them to be able to engage in these activities independently and are rotated frequently. Tasks used in independent work areas are related to individual goals and objectives. So this is also a really good area for those students that you have where you've already taught them some skills, and maybe you're a little bit concerned about maintenance, or you have a maintenance goal. These are where you can implement things for them to kind of keep practicing, and you ensure maintenance of those goals that have already been mastered. So this is what it would look like. So for example, here you have 3 students. You have Zachary, you have Jose, and you have Diego. And each of their, if you see it, each of their systems looks complete. Their schedules for their work systems is different. So within these baskets, you can have multiple activities, right, of different levels. And I'll show you what those can look like as well. So if you might have Zachary, who, let's say, Zachary is in a gen ed curriculum. So when he goes and he does this, he's working on some skills that are going to help him reach that, where Jose maybe is in a modified. So these maintenance skills that they're working on that relate to their individual goals, or that relate to their, the curriculum that they're on. And then these are some of the activities that you can use. Like I said, they can range from really simple things. This is within there, it's just sorting colors, or just building this tower, looking at this picture, really, really simple, onto taking like these cards with the pins and just, matching and counting up to 5. And then you can also even use them for like life skills type things. So here it shows them how to match socks and put them together, or how to sort different spoons and forks and stuff like that. So they can be used for a number of things. Work systems are used across the classroom day and outside of the classroom. So for art activities, for hygiene, you can use them in the cafeteria. You can even use them in the general education setting. Okay, so up to now, for the visual structure, we've started from the bottom. We talked last week about physical structure. We've talked about schedules, talked about work systems, and now we've even, kind of gone into a little bit of routine. So we're going to go also now and discuss a little bit about visual structure of materials and some other strategies. So tasks and activities are meaningful to students. Visual instructions are provided in work tasks and class activities. Visual instructions are individualized to match students' developmental levels. Tasks and activities are visually clear to students. So elements of visual organization are incorporated in work tasks and class activities. Tasks are organized in a variety of formats, and excuse me, visual clarity is provided in work tasks and class activities. So that's what, these are different examples of what that could look like, right? So right here, it shows them really simply what you want them to do. So, excuse me. And this can be used for a number of things, right? Throughout the classroom. So it could be used for washing hands. So you have each step of what you want them to do. For some students, what will work better is if you just take pictures of them doing each step. You go through each step yourself and you take pictures You have maybe like a co-teacher help you take pictures of your own self. Sometimes it has to be way more specific than this. And you can use this for a number of things. And these things are very, very easy to find. So you go to Google Images, you go to Pinterest, you go even on Canva if you want to create something yourself. But if you Google on even Teachers Pay Teachers, a lot of these things are free. And you just Google visual instructions, these things come up. They have them for the bathroom, they have them for creating the work systems themselves. They have them for a lot of things. And then on the left, you have an example of, for example, if you want to show them just how to start creating stuff with blocks, how to maybe like start just like that visual scan of like, I look up, I get something, I match. You can use these things that are really, really simple. I think this teacher maybe had even like colored these herself. So they're things that are relatively easy to find, they're inexpensive, and they can be really, really helpful for you in the classroom. So that is pretty much the visual stuff. And now I'm gonna turn it over to Sarah.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Christy. This was very helpful information. I wanted to add two things to Christy's presentation that helped me through my teaching years. One of the visuals, another way to present visuals, let's say with a student that has a hard time, like Christy was saying, like if you are in a specific activity, let's say you're in the playground and the student has a hard time knowing what's happening next. There's different, aside from the ones that Christy said, you know, stationary in the walls, I used to use a lot of folders where I used to have like an individual schedules of the student in those folders, and I would keep them with me if I were going to step out, let's say to the playground or like to the PE shelter or any activity, obviously that they desired and they were happy doing. And those transitions is where we see some of the behavior. So I would bring out those schedules so that the students, they were mobile and I would take them with me. And it was easier for me to point out, oh, look at the schedule and look what's next. So that's one thing I wanted to add. And another thing I wanted to add, which I'm sure that some of you have encountered, and Christy, I know for sure, we see a lot of parents, or when we visit classrooms, teachers that, or parents that voice, oh, you know, my students can really understand language and they don't need the visual cues, or, oh, you know, like my student, or like, I hear it a lot, especially on parents, where they come to me and they're like, oh no, I don't need to use visuals at home because he's verbal, like he can communicate with me. They don't know that we facilitate so much communication when we present this information in pictures, and they know exactly, like Christy was saying, if I don't have my phone, my calendar, and I don't know what's going to happen in my day, I also will throw a tantrum or I will, you know, have a hard time and a difficult time. So I think that it's important to understand that the visuals promote language and promote communication and decrease the frustration and the anxiety of communicating with others. So I just wanted to add that. So we're going to talk about general teaching strategies, and assessment and teaching time is our first bullet point. So teaching goals are designed to match students' developmental level, strength, and needs. Staff uses formal and informal assessment to determine students' emerging skills. Teaching goals and objectives are appropriate to the developmental level of the child and target emerging skills. So when we first get our students in our classroom, it's almost like we have to get to know them in every single aspect, not only in the academic, but in the emotional, interacting with others, how they interact with others. All that assessment that we do, formal assessments and informal assessments that we do, are really going to help us structure the materials and the content that we're gonna deliver to the students. Each student is very individual and has different needs. I think it's very important, and Christy and I were discussing this earlier today. I think it's, and we do it in our programs, and Christy has brought that also to our agency, where she makes us be more mindful of, it's also very important, and we're gonna talk about it in a few minutes, the family input in all of this. I used to, when I would get my students, I would also give a questionnaire to the parents with simple questions. What does your child like to do? What are some of your child's strengths? What are some weaknesses? What really, what are some reinforcers that we can use? So that way, all that we do in the classroom is planned around what our children are at, where they are in their development, and then we can make sure to target what needs to be done and worked. Christy, feel free to jump in whenever you want. Teaching activities are designed to match students' developmental level, strengths, and needs. Word tasks and class activities are related to identify goals and objectives. Patterns of strength and weaknesses, as well as students' interests, are incorporated into word tasks and class activities. Functional needs skills areas are incorporated into word tasks and class activities. We talked last week, or Christy and Alexandra spoke about how we structure our classroom and how we have different stations and we rotate within the classroom. What this means is that aside from focusing on the strengths of each individual and what are the things that you really need to work on, we are really going to balance throughout the activities what are things that the children can do independently, like how Christy was saying in the independent workstation, and things that might be harder for them and they need more direct instruction from the teacher. So we don't, so they don't get easily as frustrated as they go. So what that means is that you're not gonna put task after task after task difficult where the child is going to get frustrated and it's not going to be able, let's say, to complete what they're doing, or they're going to need they're more dependent on you. We want a balance where we can, present something that they need to work on, then they might need some more help and assistance, and then do something next that it's easier for them or that they can work independently. So we can rotate within the classrooms, like I said, in balance that what we want to do, so we can decrease behaviors, which Christy's gonna talk on Wednesday with Ivan. So we can decrease some of the problem behaviors that might be present in the classroom when we present those difficult tasks.
Yeah, and I think it's important too for us to keep in mind, because I remember this at the very beginning of my teaching. We have, and I understand that, and we have to meet, we have to meet the goals, and we have to make sure that we're covering all of the standards and that we're doing all of the stuff that the curriculum requires. And that can be it can be very heavy. It could be a very heavy workload for the teachers. It could be a very heavy workload for the students. But we have to keep in mind that if we get our students to the point where they're frustrated, to the point where they just don't even want to be there, where they just don't even want to be in school, we're not going to get through that for them, and we're probably not going to be able to get through that for the other students, right? So just incorporating things that they're good at, even if, some of the days when they come in, or some of the activities that they're doing maybe are not as challenging all the time, or they're not doing, they're doing different things, and you're incorporating throughout their days things here and there that they enjoy doing, even if it's not necessarily related to the curriculum, but just giving them like almost like a little mental break, right? For them to just engage in something that they like. And then, when we talk about the behavioral stuff, we're going to go into, some recommendations for, because I know that like relinquishing items that they really like, or relinquishing reinforcement, or stopping, let's say, time on the computer or whatever. I know that can be hard, but without those things, without having things that they enjoy, without incorporating those activities, like Sarah said, you're gonna, they're gonna get to the point where they're frustrated, because we all do. We're all in the middle of something that's really hard for us. We take breaks, and we'll go and we'll get coffee, and we'll just kind of like detach from that for a little bit, so that we can come back and be sort of like refreshed. But they may not have the language to express, I'm frustrated, I am tired, this is too much for me, I need a break. So it's up to us to sort of put those things out in the curriculum, or in the classroom schedule, to be able to give them those like those little like brain breaks and stuff like that.
We all need them. Oh, did you click?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, it looks exactly the same as the previous one. Teaching time promotes the development of student independence and generalization of skills. Teaching activities are designed to promote independence, emphasis on visual structure, lowest level of prompting, utilize. A number of tasks are introduced to address the skill areas to ensure multiple opportunities for practice and generalization. Emphasis on naturally occurring reinforcers, embedded reinforcement during teaching time. So what this means is that when we present a task, a new task to a student, in order for us to know that the student has mastered the skill or really knows the content, we are going to present that information, the task, in different ways to really know that the student is generalizing the concept, that they know, like if I am presenting as simple as, labeling what is a circle, or teaching them what a circle is, I am going to present it with real objects where they can trace it, where they can touch it maybe. And then in all those opportunities, I'm going to make sure that the student really knows what the circle is. And then I can mark it as the student knowing the skill. And that for sure, you probably all do. And then, throughout the day, and again, Christy and Ivan will speak more in depth about this on Wednesday, we need to keep in mind to reinforce our students at all times and give positive feedback and focus really on what they're doing well. And the more we reinforce and throughout the activities, the more likely that they're gonna work, better, that they're gonna engage better with you during work. And those reinforcers can be it can be a high five, which now we can touch, but this is pre-COVID and after COVID. But it can be a smile. It can be presenting with a peripheral activity, blowing bubbles, accessing a toy that they want. So I think that throughout the day we have to be also mindful to give the opportunity to and reinforce the hard work of that they're working. Anything you want to add, Chrissy?
That's good.
Teaching time promotes the development of student independence and generalization of skills. Variety of staff members work with students during teaching time and address skills across curricular areas. And teaching time occurs in a variety of settings, in a one-to-one setting, small group, and large group. And this is where I wanted Christy this morning. We were speaking and I was like, because Christy, I've been at CARD 11 years and Christy was more recently in the classroom and I was in a different setting. I wanted her to, because I, with her, have learned a lot on the dynamics in a classroom and how to really make efficient the time of each of the staff members that are in the classroom, your paras, the one-to-ones. So everything can be, so you can take advantage of the time and the space and the time you have with your students. So we were talking, and you as a teacher, as the lead teacher, have the opportunity to present the skills, the curriculum in a variety of settings. You can work in a one-to-one with the student. You can work in small group, which really gives you the opportunity to work with each student where they are at the level that they are. And then when you do large group, then you can work with the whole group as a group in concepts that they all can work together in, and they're not specific to the student. I don't know if you want to add, Christy, how you would do maybe work with your parents in the different stations.
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of cover like a few things with that. So there was a number of things. So like Sarah said, you want to capitalize on the time that you have with your students, right? So you want to bring in, and this was always something that for me was very successful. So when I was planning, right, it was, I always like to, have conversations with the paraprofessionals in the classroom, with therapists that had come in to work with, because I felt like that way we were able to really like have like a whole educational experience, let's say, for our students, right? And that was the main thing. But also an area of concern was, for example, if I was out one day, or if I, had an IEP or something like that, I wanted to make sure that the class, that the students, when I wasn't there, the students would still be able to come. They would still be able to, engage in all of these things, in all of these activities. And I, there was multiple, and obviously it's not going to be the same when you're the teacher and you're not there, but you want to make sure that your class always flows, that your students are always getting the best educational experience possible, and that that we provide our paraprofessionals and stuff with the, not with the support, but also with the respect of them being another professional in the classroom, right? So this was, I'm going to give you some examples of things that these are things that I found online, but I always like to have these five sort of little centers, which was like a one-to-one, a small group, computer, independent, and a sensory. So I usually would do like a one-to-one with the students. I would have my paraprofessional do a small group, and then I would teach the students to sit on the computer and do something that, and either do an iReady or do something that they were that they were able to do independently, but was also a teaching, a learning opportunity. Then in the independent, I would have them do those work baskets that we discussed. And then in sensory was really a time for them to just honestly have a brain break. So they would go, and these were maybe 15-minute rotations or 15-minute centers, like things like that. And then the last time that we met, we had a few people talking about a classroom where you would have, let's say, students that are in different curriculum, so that are modified, and students that are on gen ed, right? So you could do a whole group activity where you maybe are going to address some topics or teach a lesson that is maybe more geared to that gen ed setting or to that gen ed curriculum, so that you could have everybody, even the students that are on a modified, at least have some exposure to that gen ed curriculum, right? But then when you break them up, those small groups could be, you can do the small groups for the students all together that are on gen ed, and then all together that are on modified, and you can address it, address those curricular needs that way. Same thing with one-to-one. And then when they go to independent, those things, independent, one-to-one, computer, all those things are targeted very, very specifically to the students. So if you have, let's say, a student that's doing on a modified, your student is doing TEACCH Town, then when they're on the computer, they're working on TEACCH Town. Or a student that's on gen ed and they're doing iReady, when they're on the computer, they're doing iReady. When they're doing independent, those generalization of skills are, excuse me, they're targeted really for those students. So the only, like, when you would have that larger group setting that you're teaching that lesson, then you would do that exposure to general curriculum. But at all other points of the day you would be able to really tailor it for each student and sort of be able to teach those two curriculums. Now, I know some of you are probably thinking, I could never leave my student alone at the computer. I know it. I feel it. I know it. I can never leave my student alone in independent. I can never leave my student alone at maybe sensory or whatever. But trust me that you can. We're going to talk next week, not next week. We're going to talk on Wednesday a lot in depth to reinforcement and how to teach these skills. So what I used to do is I would hold off a little on one-to-one, and I would hold off a little on small group, and I would start by teaching them, you're going to sit on the computer. I would give them a timer, and then we had either me or my paraprofessional, whoever it was, we were right there to kind of redirect them, and then at the end provide some sort of reinforcement. And after a few trials, they really started to understand, like, okay, I'm going to come here, I'm going to do this on the computer, and then I'm going to get something that I like. Or I'm going to come here, I'm going to finish this one work task, and I'm going to get something that I like. Or I'm going to finish these two, and we would progressively make that more and more and more. And then after that, we started to where I would fade myself, and I would start doing that one-to-one, and then my paraprofessional would fade herself or himself, and they would start doing their small group. And eventually we did have these centers going, and I did teach self-contained too. So I'm telling you that it could be done. And this is just like a sample schedule of something that of how your day could look like, but not necessarily exactly like that.
Thank you, Christy. Teaching time is a structured activity that addresses skills across the curriculum following a logical scope and sequence. Materials are presented systematically and in an organized fashion. Skills tasks are broken into steps. Data are consistently recorded on student performance during assessments and teaching activities. Physical structure, schedules, work systems, and visual structure are utilized during teaching time. I think this is one of the best strategies that we can use. And you know, I think that when we present materials or a new content, new curriculum, new skill, anything that we're going to present to our students, we want to do it first of all in a broken way where they don't feel overwhelmed that you are just giving them everything. You know, there's kids that are able to manage, let's say you want them to complete a 24-piece puzzle. Instead of you giving the 24 pieces all together, this happens with my son, for example. I do it at home. I don't present all the pieces all together. I give him 10. Okay, let's try to find like the ways of doing, you know, this 10. What do we do? It's a way of them organizing themselves and knowing, you know, not getting overwhelmed that they're not able to complete the task. Data is very important, and we as and Christy as an ABA based teacher, data is very important for you to know, and data is consistently taken during the day for everything to really know that your student has mastered or is doing the appropriate steps to doing to mastering the skill. So data is an important point, and also so you can go back. Data is almost like your support. If anything, you know, if you go to a meeting, if a parent questions you, oh, you know, is my child able to do this X, Y, and Z? Okay, you go back to the data, you know, on this day at this time he was able to do it. We did it 5 times until he got it. So I think data is vital as a teacher to not only like I said, know that the skill is learned, but also as your backup for everything. And then we spoke about the physical structure, so I'm good here. Family involvement, which is my favorite topic. So I think that family plays a big role in the success of a student. That has been proven in research. I'm a teacher. The more involved the parent is, the more that we involve them, the more successful our students are. And we are living different times, right, where involvement looks differently. Before we could have volunteers come to our class, and you'll see how it's mentioned. You know, you can have volunteers come to your classroom. If you want, Christy, go to the next slide, and I'll talk about that. Before you would, you know, bring a family member to read a story, to, you know, make a pie with the students, depending on the activity. Now we're limited, right? I was explaining to Christy this morning that in my school, I have 2 kids, and one of the teachers for my 7-year-old, what she's doing is let's say for Thanksgiving, she wanted to teach the student the different steps of making a pie. And what we did as parents, anyone that volunteered, you recorded yourself, like in a video, simple video, send it via email, and she would present it to the class whenever she needed to present it. So it's a way of being available. It goes both ways, the teacher, the parent. And I think us, if we set up barriers or we don't involve families as much, we will struggle more. We will struggle more because at the end of the day, what we want overall, parents and teachers, is the well-being of the student in everything. So I think family involvement is key. So family input is used in the development of student goals and objectives. And we talked about this, sending questionnaires and getting to know your student, doing parent conferences. So you can develop the goals and objectives, not only see it from your perspective as a teacher. I think that it's important for us to also work on things that families, are seeking for you to work on, and that we have the kids for a longer period of time, sometimes more than what the parents are able to work with the students. So I think that we are key in the development, obviously. And I think us really prioritizing and understanding needs of the families, it's key for success. A consistent system of communication exists between school and home. Daily notes, communication notebook, a schedule of regular phone calls. I mean, phone calls limited, right? Or home visits. But I think it's really important, and more so for children who are, or students that are more limited and in their language, where they get in the car, they go home, and they're not able to express, if they went to the bathroom, if they, if they had a good day, if they ate, even eating a snack, whatever it was that they're not able to communicate to their family members. I think it's very helpful to have a set, some sort of system of communication. I loved personally daily notes. I know they're time consuming. I used to do them when my students were, in recess. I would take with my paras, I would fill out the daily notes. Now there's so many options. Back in the day, we never used Dojo and Blooms and all of these new programs that can also let you communicate with your teacher. So that's, I think, key and very important.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add to that. I agree with, obviously, with everything that Sarah said. And I think for me, one of the things that helped me to be really successful was I tried from the beginning as a teacher to put myself in the position of the parents, right? So like Sarah said, it has to be really difficult. And I know Sarah tells me stories all the time. I don't have children myself, but Sarah tells me all the time, when she picks up her kids and she gets to hear all the things that they did throughout the day, like how great that is. And unfortunately, for some of our families, for some of our parents, they don't have that. So good, bad, in between, like they don't get that feedback from their children. So it's important for us to keep that in mind and try to find a way to communicate with them. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to be a slave to them. It doesn't mean that you need to call parent every single day. It doesn't mean that. It means that you that you try to have a conversation. And I'll show you something that I used to use. So it means that you have a conversation at the beginning of the year, so that you can find something that is comfortable for you and for the parents. Because you may have parents, you may want to use Dojo, which is amazing, but you may have a parent that doesn't have access to some sort of technology. And it seems really like off base that somebody wouldn't have a phone or somebody wouldn't have internet, but it happens. There are families that don't have stuff like that. So you can come up with a compromise to find something where you can communicate with that parent in a way that is comfortable for you and is comfortable for them. So for example, this is something that I used to keep in my students' backpacks all the time. Super easy, and you have there for a lot of time. And then the parents would date it, they would send me a note there, and then I would date it and I would, respond to them. This was a really, really simple way for me to communicate with them. I would check it when I was looking through their homework binders or whatever. And then when it was filled out, I would keep it and I would always store it in case I ever needed like a backup. Like, no, we did discuss this, or I ever needed just for me myself, just to go back and get a reminder of something that I had done before. And then at the beginning of the year, I would always send this out, and I would get this just information from them. So just some stuff, that you would get normally. Sometimes they would forget to update their information in the school's database. So I just would have it here. And then here it tells me if they have internet access at home, what concerns they have health-wise, what was the best way to reach them during school hours, in the evening, and then just some general stuff that I wanted to know for me, like from their perspective, what was their child's, what was maybe some weaknesses or fears? What was your favorite subject? What things that they didn't like? And then I always like to get from the parent's perspective what their child's experience was the school year before. Because it's you know, you always want to know so that you can be extra vigilant about certain, you know, certain things that maybe could be triggers for parents, maybe are just things that they're worried about, so that you can always stay one step ahead and always have a conversation before anything is going to happen. Or you can be extra sensitive maybe about something that comes up, that maybe is not like a huge deal, but to like a parent or to a family because of a previous situation could be. And then I would, you know, just a little space in the bottom for whatever it is that they that the parents wanted to, you to know about.
I think also, Christy, a good point is that, you know, opening that line of communication also makes our lives as teachers easier in many ways. Like Christy said, not that we become their slaves or that we're on demand at all times, but even knowing if a child or a student had a bad night, if they didn't eat well, if they hadn't gone to the bathroom, like all those things, and having that parent communicate that to you, you can be more mindful, you know, of during that day, how to work with that child. You know, if you know they had a bad night, if they hadn't eat, if they didn't eat, if they feel sick. So I think it's very important that we open those lines of communication. Families are welcome in the classroom and our staff are welcome into the home. That's what I mentioned before. Opportunities for family members to participate in their child's classroom activities are available and utilized. Opportunities to train family members in the use of successful classroom strategies are available. I think, you know, in this particular times where everything is technology, maybe some families are more now accessible than they were before, you know. Even maybe they weren't be able to drive to the school, have a meeting at 11 o'clock, but or participate in activities, but even, you know, reading a story, making a pie, doing an activity that even a family member can, you know, a mom, a dad, a grandmother, anyone can record and then be used in the classroom, and making and having those parents feel like they belong and they're welcome, will create an environment of success.
Yeah, so one thing I wanted to add to that is just to remind you all that, so this was a checklist that was done a number of years ago. Like this is it's still something that we follow and that we use, but it is not our expectation, or I don't believe I don't believe the school's expectation for you to do any sort of home visits or anything like that. It's more like, again, this was done in a different setting, but it's just, in general, it's good information. We don't expect anybody to go into a home or do anything like that. Like just for you to work within your, you know, your classroom or your school hours or your work hours. And then whatever opportunities you would want to have with the parents, let's say whether it's a Zoom call or anything like that, or a parent-teacher conference or something, to explain to them maybe strategies that you're using in the classroom that are helping, that could possibly help them, then that's fine, and that could be within your time. But it's not an expectation for you to do a home visit. So I just wanted to make that point. And then Ms. Varela put in the chat that that it's important to know whether the parents can speak English, and then she writes some emails in Spanish because the parents don't read English. So that's another good point to mind. And in the IEP, you're going to have to know that as well, because you would have to have somebody serve as a translator. And I believe also for Creole, that's something that they would provide as well. So thank you, Ms. Varela, for bringing.
And you don't have to be, you know, bilingual to communicate. I mean, it would be easier, right? That you can change, you know, from Spanish to English, and know, you know, that some families, you know, are more comfortable with Spanish or even don't understand any English. But there's always a coworker. There's always someone that can help you communicate with that parent, and maybe consult, even if it's with the basics of what you want to communicate. I mean, we live in Miami. I think there's always someone around you that can really help you if you are struggling because you don't speak Spanish, or you know, you can always you know, rely on others and ask just the basics for the communication.
Yeah, and if you're going to have a more formal meeting, so if it's going to be something very specific, like a teacher-parent conference or an IEP, and you know beforehand that you're going to need a translator, definitely speak to your LEA representative or to your SPED chair or whoever it is that's going to be helping you run that meeting, and make sure that they're aware that you are going to need somebody that's going to be able to translate that information, because that will be necessary in those sorts of situations.
Correct.
So again, here is the information for CARD. I'm gonna leave this up for a few minutes, but I'm going to stop recording in case anybody has any questions.